I am back, flying high over the zone from Alameda, California, the comfortably zoned radio network. My name is Ralph Tyko, and I am blessed today. My godfather is here from Connecticut, Tony D'Angelo, and he's got a terrific guest that he wants me to meet, Michael Dante. How are you, sir?
Michael's my godfather's egg, so that's all three generations.
Well, I'm really blessed. I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time, Michael. And
well, thank you.
Tony says incredibly complimentary things about you, and here's how I look at it. There was an article, it was a weekly article in Reader's Digest years ago, where they asked who's the most interesting person, or something like that, the most interesting person I ever met. And I want you both to do me a favor. Come up with the 2 or 3 most interesting people you've ever met and how they've affected your lives. And let me get to know you both a little bit better through that. I'm gonna start with you, Michael. If you can go back in time, either to when you were a kid, or it doesn't have to be somebody interesting per se, somebody who just affected you in a way that changed your life. Can you come up with the first person?
Very quickly. I idolized him when I first saw him playing against the Cleveland Indians. Bob Feller was pitching, and I was 9 years old, and sneaked down a Boy Scout bus to go to Yankee Stadium from Stamford, Connecticut, which is only about an hour away from the ballpark. And that was Joe DiMaggio. I saw Joe DiMaggio play against the Cleveland Indians, and at 9 years old, I made up my mind I wanted to emulate his character, his whole demeanor. He had so much class, if I may use the word. His athletic ability was so smooth, and it made everything look easy. And I said, "Gee, God, I want to be a ball player. I want to be like Joe DiMaggio." And to think that one day down the road, many years down the road, Joe sent for me. He was a big Western fan. He loved Westerns. And he was having a bocce tournament in Las Vegas. And he told his man in charge of the bocce tournament to invite me. And I was invited and met Joe and played in the bocce tournament. As a matter of fact, Ralph Branca and I were finished third in the tournament, and won some money, and then I redonated it back to the charity and set a trend. As a matter of fact, all the others followed suit, so I was kind of proud of that. And Joe and I became pals for many years, playing in celebrity golf tournaments, and any time I came in the room, I had to sit with Joe. He would always call me over and, "Michael, come here, sit down." And it was something that quite out of the ordinary, to think that at 9 years old your idol is playing in the big leagues, and it's none other than Joe DiMaggio. And then I would years later become pals with Joe. It was a dream come true.
Joe initially?
It was his manager. As a matter of fact, I forget his name. He was running the tournament, bocce tournament, which was a lot of fun. It was really fun, and he had all the big league ball players, and it was only a few actors that were invited, and I was one of them, and we really had a wonderful time. It was great, and it was a great introduction to Joe, and from that moment on, I was on cloud 9 whenever in his presence, and I always had to sit with him. He would always, "Michael, sit here, sit with me, you're with me." And that to me was really just unbelievable. I mean, you couldn't write it a better script scenario, and have many people believe it, because it just was one in, I don't know, several million, if you want to count numbers, that something like this could happen to a lucky kid at 9 years of age, and then later on as a grown man and an actor, and then have him mutually admiration society. To me, he was one of the, if not the greatest all-round ball player I had ever seen, and he liked my work as a actor, and loved, as I said before, he loved westerns, and
right.
He would always tell me about, I saw you on this particular Maverick, or I saw you on Sugarfoot, or I saw you on this. He was an avid fan of the westerns.
Well, speaking of westerns, the one person that I remember coming out of westerns from when I was a kid was Chuck Connors from The Rifleman. Not the one person, but the one person that actually played not only Major League Baseball, but played Major League Basketball as well, pro basketball. I think it was
with Boston. That's right, in the NBA.
Yes, before the NBA formed. But he was quite an athlete, and Tony tells me you worked with him on a number of occasions. What was he like?
He was a barrel of monkeys. He was so funny. He really had a great sense of humor. They never know what he was going to do. He would do things that nobody else would. Just so extroverted, and didn't care who was around, and as long as he was comfortable with you, he'd say, he'd been in a brash voice, "Michael, come on over here. We got to talk baseball. Come on, pal. Come on, get over here." And it was something to behold, and certainly he knew his baseball. And let me add right away, Ralph, that he introduced me to my wife.
Chuck Connors
at a luncheon whereby we were invited. There were several of us invited at a country club where they met. The writers and sports writers met, and radio and sports announcers met once a month at the country club opposite Warner Brothers, Lakeside Country Club. And they had a theme every month. And the theme this particular month was professional athletes that made the transition successfully to Hollywood and acting. And Chuck Connors was one. Right. Esther Williams, Chuck Kosigian. Chuck Kosigian became a show business lawyer.
I remember Chuck Kosigian. He was a pinch hitter. I think he played with Baltimore.
For the Dodgers, yes. They were the Dodgers.
But he came
out of the Stanford University.
Wow.
He was a running back at Stanford University, and also, to my knowledge, he played baseball there as well as football. And he was signed by the Dodgers, and had a fairly successful career. Very nice person. But
there was
Chuck,
a fellow by the name of Berendino.
Berendino. Well, Johnny was the other one invited. He was invited. He was there, and we were the guests of the sports writers and sports writers and sports announcers at the Lakeside Country Club for that theme. And we had to each person had to sit at a table with 3 or 4 of the writers, or maybe one sports announcer. The writers were more in abundance than the sports announcers, of course. So we chatted with them, and then we all had to, when called upon, to go to the microphone and talk about how we made that transition. And when I walked in, Chuck said, as soon as I walked in, Michael, come here. They're sitting with me. Sit down here. We talked and chatted. Now it was time for showtime. We had to disperse and sit at our table with the sports writers and one of the announcers that were assigned to each table. So he said, no, you're not. You're sitting here. You're sitting with me. Sit here. And Goldie, I remember his name, Goldie was the host who got in touch with me to attend the occasion. Said it was okay, all right, okay. And Chuck went over and they had our names on the table on a little stand. And he went over and got the stand, my name, and on this stand and put it next to his. So that, see, you're sitting next to me. So I had to sit next to him throughout the whole event. And that's the kind of guy Chuck was. That's what I was indicating in the beginning when you asked me what kind of a guy he was. That Chuck was strong-willed and had his way of doing things, and with a sense of humor and brashness that went along that made him a very charismatic personality.
Here's a question I've always been curious of. When the writers write, like on Rifleman, they write a script, how much of it can you guys, the actors, improvise along the way? Are there words that might stick in your craw? Can you go back to them and say, let me say it this way, let me say it that way? Is there cooperation, or does it differ between each producer?
No, there's a cooperation. There's always a comfort zone with the communication with a writer and a director. As long as you don't change the meaning, Ralph, you just stay with the contents and don't change the meaning and go on forever and deviate from the point of view. So you can improvise a little bit, and then as a matter of fact, make it, as long as it makes it comfortable for you and you don't change the subject matter, it's all right with the writer and it's okay with the director.
Okay. And another question, is there a group of folks that, say, on The Rifleman, use that as an example, a group of extra actors or small part actors that keep coming back? Do they choose from people they're comfortable with? Do they bring in new people? Is it like an ensemble? Even though there were like 2 or 3 stars on each of these shows, is it an ensemble of folks that come in on a regular basis?
Yes, they have a group of actors and actresses that play small parts and bit parts and are extras that fill in and are trustworthy. They build their reputation with the casting agent, and they also have a rapport with the company, the particular company. And in this case, it would be the Riflemen, and they get very comfortable with them, and they make sure if they are exposed and you see them often, then they become a little bit more part of the family. But the extras and the atmosphere, which they call them, the atmosphere around the scenes, are usually people that are used quite a bit by that particular working company.
So the actors become comfortable with each other, and they. I want to ask about egos and what have you on these TV shows, or even in movies. How much does ego play? Are there people that eliminate themselves or look silly because of their ego, or
Well, I work with 2 actors.
Parts.
Yeah, but as far as stars, 2 of the most unselfish actors I've ever worked with no ego, really wonderful human beings and wonderful actors, Robert Taylor and Rory Calhoun. They were two.
I remember Robert Taylor, big, good-looking guy.
Yeah, and Rory Calhoun. I did 5 shows together, and a very good actor and a nice person, and they would always, they were the big stars in those days. They said, no, just do a close-up on Michael. He's doing a great job, and go with him. It's a pleasure to watch him, and he's doing a great job. So stay with him, because they, were the regulars and they were the stars of the show. So there was enough footage on them throughout their all the segments of that series. But there are some, and I have a line about often used. I don't know if I ever invented it. Maybe someone else did, and I'm just repeating it. But I like to think that I had something to do with propagating it, which is ego killed more people than cheesecake.
That is great. That is great. Okay, then I have to ask you, conversely, you mentioned these people with no egos who would switch the camera to an extra or to a lesser, I guess, just someone with a lesser part.
A young actor, yep.
Yeah, a young actor or actress who is known for the other way, doesn't want to take the camera off them. Is there anybody, even if it was in a joking way, who was the big ham that just wanted all the attention back then?
Well, I don't know who was, but there were several, several actors that made sure that they were given as much footage and close-ups about them, whatever they were doing, and they had the power to do so, to demand that. And a lot of actors had that problem. So it's just. I mean, when I think of egos, I think of Kirk Douglas.
Really?
Kirk Douglas had a tremendous ego, and he had a lot of strength and power as to who would work with him and who would not work with him, and there are a lot of actors, including Steve McQueen and the likes of Kirk Douglas, were conscious of height. They didn't want to work with anybody who was taller than they were, or better looking than they were, or stronger than they were, more charismatic, etc. You didn't work with them.
Right.
Unless they were a big, huge star that made the package work. But if you were a young actor coming along, and that happened to me a few times, so which I really don't like going into, because that's what it was. That's the nature of the business, and the egos and the power of that of those actors control that situation. If they don't want to work with somebody taller than they were, that was it. You didn't work.
Right. That's a horrible way to. But I'm sure sports are the same way. The guys who are the extras, the guys that sit on the bench, well, maybe they're not the best player in the organization to sit, but they're the most popular. They fit in right, and I'm sure there's a lot of things in acting and in baseball that transcend in terms of a mindset. Anybody get in a lot of trouble because of their ego? Anybody called on it that you remember?
Gee, I don't, Ralph. I really never had any problems with any particular actor, in a one-on-one situation. If something happened, it would have been between the agent and the director and producer as to why you didn't get the job, or you're very talented and you're a good-looking guy, you're tall, you're strong, and you didn't get the job for whatever reason. That was done, with agents and managers and the like. But as far as I'm concerned, I was never confronted one-on-one with that particular person about anything like that.
Michael, you mentioned that you wanted to be a baseball player when you were a kid, and that was your first love. Was it a matter of talent or lack thereof, like with most of us that don't get on to be big league players? Did you recognize that you weren't going to be a player at an early age, and how did you come to getting into acting?
Well, it was divine guidance, really, Ralph. I had a bad arm. I injured my arm, and it was a merry-go-round, really, because no one at that time, not like sports medicine has been the last 20 years. No medicine in the world has gained more knowledge of the profession, kinesiology, the knowledge of kinesiology, etc., with sports injuries. In those days, they didn't know anything about anything. Everything was rubs and stretches and things. They didn't know that much about sports injuries, and I was a victim of then at that time of a rotator cuff, which didn't really come to the fore, and how to deal with it as it has in the last 10, 15 years in baseball. My God, they're taking ligaments from one arm and putting in another arm, and having a Tommy John, what they call Tommy John operation, and the guys are pitching like a pup. They like have another ligament in their throwing arm, like a 20-year-old starting out in and throwing on the mound. Mostly the pitchers, of course, had these operations. But
they were also having
my
these
case,
operations at a much younger age, high school kids.
And mine, they didn't know what to do and so forth. And but they kept inviting me, because if my arm was well, I was in in good position to make the ball clubs. But I just didn't have the if you can't throw, you can't play, Ralph. And I had that, the frustration and the heartache, and but I was along the way, despite the fact that I was injured, I really learned the game of baseball, how to think as a ball player, and what I could do, what I couldn't do. But playing around big league ball players and players that had big league experience, I learned fast and did very well. And even with my sore arm, I was invited to the big leagues with the Washington Senators in 1955, and had a good chance of making that ball club after an operation. I had an operation on my shoulder.
Did you get to meet Emilio Pasquale?
Yes. I met him, the great right-hander with the great curveball. He was really a fine pitcher, one of the best Washington had during that period of time. My roommate was Mickey McDermott. Mickey was.
Oh, I met Mickey once.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was a
former Yankee.
Yankee, right? Red Sox, Yankees, and Washington, and then had a brief stint with the Cardinals.
Right. And a character in himself. He was.
Oh boy! Oh, he was. Here I was drinking milkshakes, and Mickey was drinking beer, having a lot of fun. He was a wonderful human being, and very kind. He literally give you the shirt off his back, and there wasn't a nicer human being really in the game of baseball. He just was a little off the wall, but he was still was very kind and a good person, a wonderful person.
I want to ask you about Washington. One of my guests not long ago was a fellow by the name of George Case III. His dad.
Oh, great base stealer. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
One of the fastest guys in the league at that time. And he gave me a great interview and talked about those days with the Senators. And anything you remember in particular about, a tryout camp with them or anybody you met along the way?
Well, I met the whole team. When you go to the spring training, invite you to spring training with Big League Club, you're one of the players. They're waiting for you to help the club.
Now, you were with the organization. You were a minor league player to come up.
Yeah, but I was a bonus. Yeah, but I was a bonus player with the Braves. See, I started out with the Braves, and in those days I received a bonus $6,000, and we were won the New England Newspaper League championship, and it was held at Braves Field in Boston, Massachusetts. And I was the most valuable player in the tournament. So I was given a bonus of $6,000. In those days, you couldn't get a dime over $6,000. If you did, they had to keep you 2 years on the bench in the big leagues, and they weren't going to put a 17, 18-year-old kid giving him more than $6,000. And those were the rules in those days. But
even $6,000 was a lot of money in those days.
Yes. I bought our family our first automobile, a Buick, 4-door sedan, white wall tires, radio, heater, and it cost all of I think it was $2,500, brand new Buick. Today you can't buy the hubcaps for that amount of money.
Right. And they sent you to your first minor league team. What team was that, and how did that go right away?
I went to an affiliate. We had, it was about 800, 900 players in those days in the Braves camp. They had Class D teams and B and Class C and Class A, Double A, and then the big leagues. And then AAA. So I was sent to, a young kid. I was sent to an affiliate of Olean. I played in Olean for a few weeks, and they had a falling out. They had a disagreement with management there, and there were 3 or 4 of us that were sent there, and then we were. Everybody had to leave because the working agreement wasn't working as far as the Braves were concerned.
And the minor league affiliate,
Yeah, right. So we were on our way, and I went and finished the season out with a club that they owned, which was Owensboro, Kentucky, in the Kitty League, and that was really nice because they had their own the ballpark and a nice ballpark and really a nice town and nice people.
Dante, coming from the north, was this your first time in the south, and what struck you about the differences between the northern part of the country and the southern part?
Yeah, it was the outer limits of a lot of the communities that were underdeveloped, and farmers and farmland, and those farmers were descendants of farmers before them, a generation or two or three, and those people, live just as their parents before them and develop their lands, and some of them, as you go from the farms to the city life, it was an interesting transition that I had never seen before because I had never traveled, being an 18-year-old kid at the time. I had never traveled,
Were you shocked at the differences, or is there a common denominator with all of us that doesn't make us that different?
No, I think those people are happy with their lifestyle, and some of the children, and I'm sure most of them work hard, and particularly nowadays, to send their children to college, and but the old timers still love being farmers and ranchers, and whatever their occupation is on that land, and they're proud to be landowners and still be able to do the farming as their fathers and mothers and fathers before them. So you could see, that they certainly weren't opulent. They didn't have all the facilities that you have in the big city, and the homes that they lived in, and some of them in shacks and not very let's say up to date and comfortable as some of the other folks, but they liked what they were doing, and sometimes people are much happier with less than having the grind of having to in pursuit of money and all the toys that we have today. I don't know if a lot of the people that have all these toys today are as happy as some people that don't have as much.
That's absolutely true. In any generation, it's always that, the comfortable things don't necessarily replace the basics. Tony, why don't you chip in here a little bit and help me out?
Well, it's always a fascinating discussion with Michael. Now, I've been interviewing Michael for, I've had Michael as a friend, and I've been interviewing him for the better part of 10 years, and you never get done interviewing Michael. It's just he's had so many experiences. It just amazes me. And Michael, this is the thing that I always keep coming back to. We're all people, whether we want to be people or not. And there was that story, you probably heard it years back, of Joan Collins. This is like pre-Dynasty. She was standing in the unemployment line in California, and everybody recognized her and made a fuss over her, and she was horrified. And she's like, I'm just an out-of-work actress. And I mean, it's... we sit, we rejoice at your body of work. You've been a great friend and an example to us all, but I can only imagine what it's like being an actor waiting for that phone to ring and trying to cobble together an existence. And my view on that is, I guess it ain't easy. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. You are dependent. It's one of the few times you have no control of your life. You don't, unless you become a big star. But in the interim, when you're beginning, you're dependent on an agent or to get you work. And then in the beginning, you go from one job to another. You start out with roles. You have small roles with no billing, and then you have another role category, and then you're given a supporting billing, and then you go from guest from co-star to starring, and in some cases guest starring, and the guest starring would be mostly in television. So, excuse me. And so you worked your way up, and it was so competitive because we're talking about really, to me, the best years in Hollywood and in America were phenomenal in the 50s. 50s were the growth and the creative talent coming in from all directions, writers, producers, directors, coming into the cameramen and musicians and coming into the business, and the advent of television became the big money maker for everyone, and jobs, and of course, and it meant money, and they were more jobs were available, but you still didn't have the power of controlling your life. And as a matter of fact, a friend of mine, a very fine writer, and you can verify this by looking it up, I'm sure on the internet, S. Lee Pogostin. He won 2 Emmy Awards. And I took him to the Dodger game. Al Campanis was a great friend of mine, and Tommy Lasorda knew them well, and I was a big Dodger fan. And I took S. Lee to a ball game, and he said, "Michael, do you mind if I'm looking at you during the game? I don't know the game like you do, and I'm watching you. I'll watch you, and I'm sure I'll learn some things." And okay, fine. I said, "Fine, okay, sure." So when we finished, we were driving home, and he said, "What do you see out there in the ballpark that I don't see and I don't know about?" I know all about, that you look at all the nuances, the movement of players playing, positioning themselves for certain hitters because of the certain pitches that will be thrown. But something is bigger behind that, and what is that? And I know that you do have an intelligent answer for that. And I said, "Yeah, I do, Wesley. I come to the ballpark and I have great satisfaction when I come and enjoy the game that I love to watch, and not interested in drugs and not interested in drinking. I didn't drink. I never had a drug in my life, and so forth. And I love the evening and having dinner with Al Campana in his booth, private booth, and watching the games and rooting for the Dodgers." And I said, "There's the satisfaction I get is simple. There are no grays when I come to the ballpark and watch the game. Somebody wins and somebody loses, and I have that satisfaction. But in my life and in my career, it's grays until I'm or am more successful."
Right.
And he said,
"I knew you had something." It goes good. It's a mixed bag of nuts. It goes good on some levels, maybe not on others. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So I have the satisfaction when I leave there. There's no frustration. See?
Right.
Somebody won and somebody lost, and now we go on to the next game and the next event. But in show business, and as an actor, I'm dependent on somebody else to get me a job. I have no control of that until I get the job. So that frustration and what actors face, in my case, I had the wonderful high of going to the ballpark and enjoying the great game of baseball and being with wonderful people and knowledgeable people about the game on and off the field, and having the satisfaction of my team winning, and then for the most part, the Dodgers were one of the best teams in baseball over a period of 10, 15 years.
Right. May I ask you about the McCarthy era? You were the 50s were that, and actors and writers were affected horribly by Joseph McCarthy and what was going on. You have any stories about that, Michael?
Gee, I don't, Ralph. I didn't know. I was just too young and a rookie in the Hollywood scene. Just a young actor on the contract when I first came out there in the 50s on the contract to MGM. And they tell me, I'm not sure of this, but I have heard this many times, you're the only actor we know that was on the contract to 3 major studios, MGM, Warner Brothers, and 20th Century Fox. So I was in pursuit of just being able to make enough money. When I first started, I made $200 a week on the contract to MGM, which was fine.
I had an apartment.
I had an apartment, I had a car, and had enough money to eat, and on occasion buy some nice clothes and that sort of thing. But I really then, when MGM did not believe in the transition from motion pictures to television, they were the last. They thought it was a passing fancy, and said it'll be over with in 2 years. Well, were they wrong? And Warner Brothers was the opposite. Warner Brothers was right in the midst of I believe at one time Warner Brothers and William T. Orr, the executive producer there, had 10 hours of prime time on television. Today, the 10 hours on prime time, you'd be able to buy half of the state of California. So they were the first to really take advantage of the media and made inroads and made a lot of money. And being on the contract there, that's where I really learned my craft. But to really answer your question, Ralph, along the way of getting involved in politics, I never did. I've always, my wife and I are nonpartisan, and we vote for the person. And that person has to have the character, the decency, and the talent, obviously, to lead a country, the greatest country in the world. We love our country.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't suppose you ever imagined the political situation being like it is when you were growing up.
No.
Like all of us. I don't think.
No.
Okay.
No, it was like school teachers, Ralph. Your school teacher was your second parent. You know, you had so much respect. Now school teachers are getting sued and getting beat up by students and shootouts and terrible tragedies that we've experienced with these nutcases that have murdered our children and our officers, and the things that are going on that are just unbelievable. I mean, we used to stop and they had policemen that would escort us, excuse me, in certain areas to cross the street to go from one side of the street to the other. And those officers, we worshipped. We thought they were and they were caring, and we knew and got to know them, and some of them knew our families very well, and in our town at that time the population was about 20-something thousand in Stamford, Connecticut. So the people knew each other pretty well, and we were well taken care of, and the kids were so respectful of police officers and school teachers and anyone who cared about them. It was reciprocal. And
athletes.
and then coaches and And we had and the youngsters, the males, my group, my gang that I hung out with were all athletes, and there was a code, a written code, to respect your opponent, and if you won, great. If you lost, you lost as a gentleman. You didn't like I see now an athlete jumping up and down. He makes a touchdown. He jumps up and down like a clown. Why? That's your job. You could do it with class, or you can do it like a clown. And I see more clowns than I see class acts. And then they
believe you were there before. Do it like you've done it 1,000 times.
Exactly. Good, like you know how to do it, and you can do it and do it again, and do it maybe even better. I don't get it. I really don't get it, Ralph. Attitude.
I know.
In life is attitude.
There's so many of these questions are open-ended questions in our society today. There's a lot of things that have happened that we don't know who to put the blame on. But let's keep it somewhat fun. Steve McQueen, one of my favorites of all times. One of my favorite movies was The Great Escape, and another one was Bullet, a movie that took place in San Francisco, and I'm out here in Northern California, and I get into the city, and I every now and again go by in neighborhoods and what have you that he did his car chase in, and I keep remembering him, and a very cool guy. You have any memories with him? Anything you
I have really some good memories of Steve. I thought I was going to do Bullet and play his right-hand man. Phil D'Antoni, the producer, Robert E. Relle, who was the exec producer, with partner with Steve McQueen at the time, and Peter Yates was the director of Bullet. And they had seen me in the Desilu Playhouse with Roy Calhoun and Janice Rule, where I played a fighter. And they liked what I did and brought me into Warner Brothers, where they were going to film Bullet. And I met them for lunch. He gave me the script, and went home and said, yeah, fine, I'd love to do it. And he said, fine, we're going to have lunch. This was like a Friday. And he said, we're going to have lunch with Steve on Monday. Well, it so happened that Steve and I did our first picture together, Somebody Up There Likes Me, with Paul Newman and Sal Mineo. And I was on the contract.
Robert Loggia, too, right, Michael?
Beg your pardon?
Robert Loggia as well, I think, was in that.
Yeah, Robert Loggia was in it, right. Very, very good, fine actor. And I was on the contract, and that was my first job. And the first job on the contract at MGM, working with Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, and Sal Mineo, and going to a location in New York, which is just an hour down the road from Stamford, Connecticut. What a wonderful gig that was. And my introduction, if I may, Steve and I stayed at the Warwick Hotel where the company was staying, and it was raining like, oh gosh, cats and dogs, and you could hardly see across the street. And I was standing under the canopy waiting for the car to take me to the location where we were going to shoot that day. It was early in the morning, and then all of a sudden this character on a motorcycle pulls up. He didn't have one rain apparatus, equipment, gear on his body, and he had a little cap on his head. And he pulled up and he said, "Hey man, do you know where the MGM company, Somebody Up There Likes Me, is working?" I said, yeah. I said, I'm going to get a ride here in a minute. You could follow us out, or are you working on the company? He said, yeah. He said, well, I said, well, why don't you park your bike at the hotel and then come in the car and with us? So he said, no, man. He said, I'll follow you. Well, 5 minutes later, the car came. I got in, and he followed us. And I mean, you couldn't see across the street. That's how bad it was raining. And we go to location, and in those days they had a little small dressing room for Steve and myself, and we're to share that for clothing and so forth. So
right.
Anyway, I excuse me. I get in and take my clothes off, and I'm dry, and there's 2 towels in there. And Steve, about 5-10 minutes later, comes in. He said, hey, man, he said, I'm Steve McQueen. So we shook hands and met each other. And lo and behold, that was Steve's first picture and my first picture.
Wow.
Somebody up there likes me, okay? Small part. We had, we were part of the youth sequence.
You mentioned Sal Mineo, who was killed tragically, big Hollywood story. Anything about him that you remember?
No, that he was a very nice guy and a good actor, very good actor. But I didn't know anything about him. You know, we just very cordial. We all got along well. It was fine.
Okay, when I listen to you, I hear your Massachusetts dialect. Did they ever have to on in a scene or anything say, "You sound like you're from Boston"? You know.
No, I'm from Connecticut.
Okay.
Connecticut.
Okay, but it's a New England. Let me just say it's a New England dialect. It stood out. It stands out, and it makes you. It's very interesting. No, I had no problem with that. But I want to give you the third act of the Steve McQueen introduction. Cut to the chase years later, and that was Bullet. And we're going to meet Steve on Monday and have lunch with him, all of us. And Steve was late about a half hour, and we finished our luncheon. And I made one mistake. When luncheon was over, I got up first. And Steve looked at me and said, "Oh, what'd you do, get taller?" Well, I knew right then and there I was out of the picture. So I got a call. I went home, and about 4 o'clock that day, Robert E. Relier, fine producer, called. He said, "Michael, I'm sorry to tell you that Steve doesn't want you in the picture. He doesn't want to work with nothing personal. He just doesn't work with anybody taller than him. And you're a great-looking guy, and you're tall, and he doesn't want to. He likes you, you know, and but it's nothing personal. It's just that he doesn't want to work with anybody taller than him." So I never did Bullet. I really wanted to do that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that would have helped my career at that time. But I went on to do other things, and God bless him if that was his credo. That's
right.
Understandable.
Yeah, I've heard stories that Gary Cooper was very short, and that he had to make adjustments on the set, where you stand on a box, or this or that. No.
Gary Cooper was tall. Cooper was tall.
Well, then somebody played Lou Gehrig and was very small. Was it Cooper that played Lou Gehrig?
Yeah, it was Cooper. No, Cooper
I remember being a tall man.
He was tall.
Now I'm thinking of somebody else that was...
no, you're thinking of... he did Shane. Alan Ladd. Alan Ladd was the guy.
Alan Ladd, right.
But it didn't bother Alan Ladd, and it didn't bother the great Jimmy Cagney. He worked with anybody who was 9 feet tall or 3 feet tall. They were actors that didn't get involved in the casting and didn't interfere with their complex of working with somebody taller with them.
I spend a lot of time on YouTube looking at these guys like Hope and Crosby and stuff. They were all dancers as well. They mentioned Jimmy Cagney. This guy, tremendous dancers. Did you have to do any of that? Did you have to learn dancing or?
Yeah, when I was on the contract to MGM, I went to voice classes, and they had a dancing instructor as well. So you learned in fencing, you had voice, fencing, acting, dancing, and then they had a gym there. So I worked out in the gym from time to time. So they had everything you needed to develop the talent that had star potential. Contract players were signed that had star potential. Yeah,
right.
In films.
So worst comes to worst, they can be a character actor, but you start high.
Right, exactly. It would be someone, that had that charisma and the talent to be that supportive to the number one leading man or leading lady. And then that changed after. That changed.
And I do recall Michael saying at one time that he was right at the cusp of when the model for the leading man changed from, Michael, the tall, dark, athletic, handsome type, to the Richard Dreyfuss or the Dustin Hoffman as time went on. And Michael was kind of riding like the high end of that, and then the model kind of changed.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
As time went on.
Yeah, as time went on, Dustin Hoffman was the one of the first to the anti-hero became the hero, and then became stars in pictures. So that transition was applicable, and actors, regardless of their height or their look, whatever it was that they were doing, and they were doing stories that were offbeat, and the hero did not have to be the tall, handsome actor or a beautiful young lady, et cetera, et cetera.
Our time is getting short. I've got to ask you about Edward G. Robinson, and there was a movie he made. He played a minor league manager with the New York Giants.
I'm so happy you're talking about this.
Well, pardon me?
I'm so happy you're talking about this.
Oh.
The big league.
Well, I am too, because it's all this baseball stuff is my passion. So I have nothing else. I'm as shallow as it comes. But this movie was $1 million movie. In New York, they had, when I grew up, they called it the $1 Million movie, and it came on Channel 9, and it played. This was on repeatedly, and Tony and I talked about the movie. I can't think of the name of the movie right now.
Oh, The Big Leaguer. The Big Leaguer. He was a manager in the Giant system in the early 1950s. Richard Jekyll, Richard Long, a couple of other players that I just can't recall.
Well, I was hoping or wondering whether or not Michael remembers that and has any memories of that movie or.
No, I don't, but I do have fond memories of working with Eddie G. In Seven Thieves that I did with he and Rod Steiger and Joan Collins, Eli Wallach, for 20th Century Fox. I had a 5-picture deal with 20th Century Fox, and that was the last studio I was on the contract to. And Seven Thieves was a caper. We robbed the Monte Carlo. And working with him was such a joy. He was so talented. He was a master of his craft and a nice man. And I did talk about baseball. I took him to his first. He had never been to a Major League Baseball game. He was not a baseball fan, but I took him to the Dodger game, and we sat with Al Campanis and had dinner with Al. And, of course, prior to that, I invited Al and Tommy Lasorda to the set of Seven Thieves, and they came, and I introduced them to the cast. And they were big fans of Eddie's. And Eddie and I talked on the set, and I said, Eddie, have you ever been to a big league ball game? No. And I said, would you like to go? And he said, yeah. I said, well, I'll come and pick you up, and we'll go on the weekend, which we did. And we sat with Al Campanis, watched the ball game. He was like a little kid. He loved every moment of it. And
wow.
It didn't take long before the word got out. The O'Malleys had their booth 2 booths away, and they came over and introduced themselves. They were big fans of Eddie's. And would you believe they were sending their limousine after him to come to the ball game? From that moment on, they had invited him at any time, and we'll send our car to come and pick you up and sit with them to watch the ball games. And he became a big Dodger
Doris
fan.
Day would sit at those games. I remember.
Yeah.
Did you happen to know her? I thought she was pretty special.
I met her. Yeah, I met her, and she was really a very nice lady. And as a matter of fact, it was at a dinner party and so forth. And I always thought she was very, very talented. She could sing, she could dance, good actress. And
right.
And she loved dogs, which we do. We love dogs too, and she's a lover of animals and does a great job with all those charities.
Absolutely. Who is the best actor you ever worked with that nobody knows about, that didn't make it for one reason or another?
Wow, that's a toughie. Yeah, there's a lot of.
Or who is one that you can think of that just, wow, that guy could have been great, or that guy wasn't, couldn't fit in. Who do you think would have been something special?
Well, it's a tough question, because most of them, Ralph, that were that good, even though they were character actors or borderline leading man or a character actor, did become successful. Were successful. Very, very few. If they had a problem or a health problem or something and didn't have the energy and the fortitude to pursue their careers in the direction they wanted to go, you never know. If it was their fault or the agent's fault. Agents were never my favorite people. They were highly opinionated, and casting people all had their pets. So a lot of actors that I thought were very good actors and should be given opportunities never did get the opportunity because the people that were casting them, they were highly opinionated, and they would pick their guy or they would pick their lady for a particular role. But
maybe I should have worded the question differently. Is there anybody that falls under that category that you can think of that just didn't get the break?
I could tell you one that I knew was going to do very well when he was doing small parts when I was under contract to Warner Brothers. And he worked practically every show. He would come in and do a small part a day or two, And then I would see him on a Maverick. Then I would see him on a Cheyenne or Colt 45 or one of the other shows, Sugarfoot, and all the shows they had going at the time at Warner Brothers. And we talked, and I told him, I said, gosh, you keep doing this, you're going to be doing a lot of important things in our business. And that was Ed Asner.
Oh, wow.
Ed Asner started out doing small parts, and it didn't take long before they recognized this talented guy, and he went on to do wonderful things in television and motion pictures.
And a very, very big man in the unions in
yes.
the Hollywood, Ed Asner. Very bright guy, played in the Mary Tyler Moore Show and what have you. One more. Tony was right. You talk to you, Michael, and one thing leads to another. We could do this for 30 days straight. Robert Mitchum. If I had to name one guy, one actor, and when I was a kid, who I'd go, wow, this guy's an actor, not just a line reader. Did you know him at all? And
no, I didn't know him. I met him briefly. I know his sons, two of his sons. They were nice guys, and they were actors, and I would always see them in charity tennis tournaments or golf tournaments, and they were fun. They looked like their dad. You couldn't mistake their looks. They were all handsome and certainly looked a great deal like Mitch. But he was a charismatic. He had charisma. I thought that was his forte, was his presence. When he was on screen, you looked at him. You didn't look at too many other actors, I think, that could challenge his charisma. And he had that unique style of very soft-spoken and low-keyed and sort of cool personality.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, and I
like he was above it all and just...
yeah.
Yes.
I liked him in
guy.
Westerns. I thought he was a real cowboy. He really fit that genre. His whole presence and his countenance and his voice and his slow, easy style was really, really spectacular.
Right. How did you learn to ride, or did you learn to ride as a kid, and then all of a sudden, because I know being in Westerns, that's part of it. Did they have an equestrian, I think it's equestrian, unless that's swimming.
I think you got it right.
What do I told you?
Yeah, no, that's right. They had, Warner Brothers they had an equestrian area right, 5-10 minutes from the studio. So you can get lessons and learn to ride there from the experts, and they were terrific. But I learned to ride as a kid at Rennie's Stable in Greenwich, Connecticut, the next town from Stamford. In those days, that wonderful wooded area and a stables, and it was called Rennie's Stables. And a friend of mine, Johnny Rosa, was an employee there, and he worked to curry the horses, ride the horses, and feed the horses, and water them down. And he invited me to come out one day, and I went out to ride with him, and I wasn't very good in the beginning, and then, of course, acclimated myself, and he taught me what to do, and so did Mr. Rennie, and I learned to ride then, and of course didn't ride for many years until I got out to Hollywood. So that foundation served me well. I was very fortunate to have an idea so that if I got on a horse, I wasn't going to get thrown and kill myself. But
okay.
that did help
now,
me. Yes.
It's much like player development. You had the basics. Did these equestrian classes really help you? And were they, like in a week you could learn stuff? Or
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sure, you could learn.
Okay. So they enriched your talents.
Yeah, and it made you look good. But you have to remember, you can only look good on a good horse. If you had a horse that had a sloppy gait, or he wasn't in good shape, and he was barn stour, or it just wasn't aligned with you and your demands, you'd have a problem. So when you're doing westerns, the one thing you have to always remember, you got to have a good hat, a good gun belt and gun, and a good horse to make you look good. All of those three elements. If you didn't have those three things, you better.
Yeah, but if you weren't 6'2" and looking good with the hair and all that to start with, what do you have to have it to begin with. Those are just things that enrich it. You have to have the basic talent.
Right, and have the talent, right, to do what you're doing.
So not to sell yourself short, to get as far as you did, you had the talent, sir. And next time you come on, and I hope there will be a next time, one of my friends of the show who's been on before is a fellow by the name of Jim Campanis, who is your friend's grandson.
Yes. Oh, I know him very well.
Oh, okay. Then I'd love for you guys to come on and talk about his grandfather on some show. If you'll come back and if you'll allow me to put that together.
Oh, absolutely. I love his father, Al Campanis, a great baseball knowledge and a wonderful man. And I was at Jimmy's wedding. I went to his wedding. I was invited to his wedding. Jimmy, his dad and mom. His mom was alive at the time. We became very good friends. I've been in their homes. I've been in Al's home several times, and met Al's mother, who was one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. She was a Greek goddess. She was a gorgeous woman. That's a great story. They're wonderful people.
Father and grandson did a book recently, and they've been on book tours. So maybe we can get all three of you. Jim's dad and who I. Oh
yeah, well there's Jim Jr. No, I don't know.
Oh yeah, correct.
Jim.
He's now a junior. I think he now became a junior. He never to avoid confusion with the book. Yes, his name was Jim as well. Hey, thank you both, Tony. Thanks for being my godfather. I'm glad I got to finally meet your godfather. Yeah, this is very trippy. No one looks at me as a godfather. So it'll be a long time before that. Don't worry.
Terrific segment, gentlemen. One for the ages.
And how many Jewish godfathers can there be? All right, Larry David is the Jewish godfather in today's day and age. Listen, guys, it's an incredible trip for me. Thank you very much, and bless you both for being here.
God bless you, and Michael, continue being well, my friend.
Thank you so much, Tony, and Ralph. It was a pleasure, and let me just say, God bless you both, and God bless America. Please, God, let of America survive all these transitions that are being taken place that are just absolutely crazy. I don't know what's going on, but let's hope for the best.
For sure. Have a great morning, gentlemen, and for me, it's an afternoon.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to sign off just by saying, keep to everybody out there, to you guys, to everybody, keep on keeping on, and we'll catch you next week.
Great.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Take care.
See you soon.
Bye, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Tony.